Welcome back, folks. We got about 30 minutes left to go in trading until we hit the Memorial Day weekend. We get the S&Ps off by 31. Markets in the red right now. We got a little dollar weakness, and we got the 10-year sitting at about 4.5%. Right now, folks, we're going to talk to our man Besfort Behluli, and we're going to talk a little bit of real estate. My dad used to talk to Besfort on Fridays. We're going to kind of revive that segment, bring it back, talk a little real estate. Besfort, good afternoon.
Hey, Tommy. How's it going?
It's going fantastic, man.
Awesome.
You know, I always used to get great feedback. We at TFNN, the conversations, talking a little real estate you and my dad had, and let's talk a little bit of real estate, Besfort. Yields have been in focus. We got the 10-year at about 4.5% right now, but I know, you and I always talk about the markets in real estate, of course, but supply, I always see headlines, right, that no matter what it is, CNBC, CNN, we see a lot, supply going up in this market right now. But why don't we start off? Talk to me about what you're seeing. You live and breathe in this market in St. Pete every day, and what are you seeing in this market, man?
Yeah, definitely. Supplies are way up. There's just a lot of people that either, they were trying to flip, or, just bought too many houses at one point, and now they're trying to offload them. And so there's a lot of supply in the market. Actually, going back more than 10 years, this is the most supply we've had in this market in a really long time. So there's a lot of supply, but there's also a lot of properties selling. So as long as you have a nice property and it's priced right, it's going to go. But there's definitely a lot of supply on the market right now. So, that's bringing the prices a little bit lower because now there's so much more competition. But, again, with the right property at the right price, you could sell it within a week.
And that's great feedback. And I know we always talk about this. Of course, we have Tiger Construction. Folks, we have Tiger Real Estate. If you want to if you're in this market at all, folks, please reach out to Besfort. We'll get his phone number out there. There it is. I see it right on the front page of what we're doing, of the broadcast. You see his phone number. And if you can't remember, folks, just email me, Tommy@TFNN.com. I'll send it over to Besfort as well. But it's interesting, Besfort. We had such the acceleration. I remember during that acceleration after COVID, I would talk to you, talk to my dad, and you guys would tell me, and I remember listening to the conversations you guys had on the show saying, you put something up, every bid was above market, right? Nothing, and so we're not in that market even close anymore. But talk to me like you said there, because we've been talking about, I know you have a bunch of clients in St. Pete, you have some properties that of course are perfect like anybody else, you have other properties that just might need a little bit of TLC or whatever it is. And just some, and you touched on it, but I think that, and because I get the questions as well, and I've, my experience, of course, with the properties my dad had, and, working with you, moving out some of those, it's interesting how you look at, just like you said, you sell something at the right price, you sell it in a week, but boy, when you're outside of that area and you might be searching for a little bit more like we had in the past, it's kind of tough right now. And just kind of, because you're always telling me you're meeting clients, they're doing walkthroughs, just some of that feedback for the viewers.
Yeah, for sure. So just like you were saying, back in the day, we will list a property with your dad, and we will look at the our phones to see the time. So if we list it at 4, we're like, let's see how fast somebody will call, and I kid you not, within 5 minutes we would get a call. Oof. And boom, we're putting an offer in, blah blah blah, it will go. So we could almost sell anything during the peak of the pandemic, right away above asking. But now, and I talk to my clients all the time, especially when they're getting ready to list. I say, listen, people right now want things to be done. They don't want to come in there and see anything that's broken or anything that needs work. Even if it's a smaller thing, they see it as a big thing. And it is a big thing when you think about it. They add up really quick. So, if you have a property that's, done properly, everything is updated, ready to go, you're going to get top price, and you'll probably sell it pretty quickly. But if you have a property that you just did a little bit of work, you're trying to spruce it up here and there, and you're thinking you're going to get top price for it, you're not, and I see this every day, all these people, they want to get top price for their properties. They're looking at properties around them, and they're like, oh, look at this property sold for this price. But it just, doesn't happen. People come in, they see it, they don't want it, so there's a lot on the market. And, for example, there's a client, he listed a property I think at 575, right? Now, that property, if it was updated properly, it would have gone, within a week at 575. But I don't think it's going to go, maybe even close to 500 would not go, in its current condition. And it's nice, it's livable. But again, it's not, fully updated like people would like it nowadays.
And it's great feedback. And, I talk to you all the time. And, of course, I have lots, folks. I have houses. And we talk about Besfort, right? The lots right now, if they're not some kind of, because I have lots, folks, that are single-family lots in just beautiful single-family neighborhoods. And then I have some lots that are on First Ave South, where you can do some. And the prime lots, we're getting some action on. But the single-family lots, it's a little tough right now, Besfort, right? Because, and almost to what you're speaking to, versus the development going on, there's already a supply out there. But what's the other side of that conversation we have is we're going to put beautiful houses on there and they're probably going to sell immediately. That's, and when I'm not immediately, but that is what is going on in this market right now, folks. And it makes sense, Besfort, because, and what are you looking at for rates right now, if I can ask? That's what people always, for like a 30-year right now on the mortgage, we know yields are on the rise. But how are you seeing that? Because obviously that contributes, right? People are stretching themselves on a payment. So the last thing they want to do is stretch themselves on a payment and then say, I have to do a reno as I walk in. And I think that's probably a huge part of what's going on. Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's a huge thing, right? Everybody's already stretched to the limits with prices. And we're not talking about just real estate, everything else. And then if you have to go in there and renovate it, forget about it. So, and I think rates right now are hovering, high sixes, low sevens, and that's if you got pretty good credit,
Sure.
So, and that's for a primary residence. So if you're looking for an investment or, anything commercial, just add at least another point to that. You're paying that kind of money for it. So, the rates are definitely high, and that's what's kind of holding things back. And I always say if the rates came down another point, it would take off again. But just remember, there's a lot of listings, but there's also a lot of selling too. So there's still a lot of properties being sold. And as far as the median price, so I just went back and looked. The height was July of 2022.
Okay.
And basically, since July of 2022, it's kind of been a flat line, right?
Yeah. For
the median price around here. So it's gone down a little bit, but not by much. So people are still holding on to these prices, and that's where we are right now.
Hey, we had like 100% run up in 18 months almost prior to that 3-year consolidation. I want to talk to you a little bit about multifamilies when we get back, all right? Because we talk about that. We're talking about cash flow on multifamilies, folks. We'll talk a little bit more. We're coming back with Besfort. S&P's off by 25. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. We got the S&P's off by 22, NASDAQ 100 off by 129. We're talking to Besfort Behluli with Tiger Real Estate. If you want to reach Besfort, folks, his phone number is right there on the front page of our broadcast, and you can always just email me, Tommy@TFNN.com. Besfort, I'm going to jump around to a couple equities real quick. You got X trading higher, U.S. Steel. So Trump, he approves the merger with Nippon and ex-U.S. Steel. How that? Up 24% right now, Besfort. We got some movement, man, in this market. And we got gold right now, up $66, and we got a quick question of the den talking about new gold. It's a great question, Double Broad, talking about where to get out of this thing. And, folks, you're going to have to make some decisions here with the runs we have in gold going on. Okay, new gold just trades from $1 to $4.28. We're right in that channel line, all right? But set a stop. That's all I can say. Set a stop, whether maybe you get some free shares out there. We got quite a run, okay? And my dad always used to say, you don't hold the equities forever. You don't. It's something that the volatility that you get over there across the board, it is remarkable. So you can't profit if you never sell, folks. And this has been quite a run in a short period of time on some of these gold equities. Now, Besfort, let's talk some multifamilies because I know one of your clients has got a multifamily out there, and we talk about the cash flow deal right now, and it is even single families. I look at some houses, maybe they're $600,000. You do a mortgage on that, and you're talking about having to get rent-wise $4,000 easy, and that's just covering your mortgage, let alone insurance and taxes. But talk to me about multifamilies and what you're seeing in terms of the difficulty there.
Yeah, for sure. So, cash flow is a little tough right now, especially in investment, because the interest rates are again, so high. So if you're buying an investment property, you're always paying a little bit more in interest rates, right? So, for example, the property I have, if you end up buying that, and if you put anything less than 20% down, you're basically losing money every month. Now, as an investment, you would have to put up at least 20%, but more than likely you will need at least 30%. Otherwise, you start losing money every month on that property, just because the income that you get from it is not enough to cover all the expenses. And then you got to talk a little bit about vacancy rate. Things break. Tenants don't really take care of the properties like they should, lawn maintenance, water, trash, sewer, you add all that up, and in a lot of cases you're in the negative, by, maybe a couple $100, sometimes up to $1,000. So a lot of these properties are having a tough time to sell. Now, the only difference is if it's 4 units or less, what I'm seeing is you could buy it as a primary residence, right? So I just had this happen actually where a client ends up buying this 4-unit. They're living in one of the units. They're renting out the other 3, and they're still paying out of pocket. The other 3 units aren't covering everything, but at least they own a property. They're close to downtown. They're building equity, and it's probably cheaper than what they were paying in rent. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
when you add everything up, but yeah, so it's investment wise right now, it's tough for a lot of these to to make the numbers work. So yeah, it's drying up.
I was just
oh, go ahead.
No, I was playing with a mortgage calculator, I was saying $650,000 house. Let's say you put down, and I'm not even going multifamily, but you can probably buy a multifamily. Maybe you can buy a duplex or something, depending where you are, right? 650 grand. You put down 130 grand, 20%, 30 years. This one popped in 6.958. But if you're talking about investment property, folks, you're not getting a 6.9% mortgage. So that's being kind. You're still talking about right now, Besfort, about $4,000 a month for that home, and that does not include any type of maintenance. That's including property tax and maybe some insurance. But you see, folks, a $650,000 home right now, are you really pulling in $4,500 a month? I'm not sure. It gets difficult, and then when you go in the multifamilies, and so that's a tough deal when you start getting to the point. And like Besfort talked about, okay, so let's say you put down 30%, Besfort, right? But boy, if you're putting down 30% on a $650,000 home, you're putting on $200,000 is what you're putting down, folks. Okay, and like you're breaking even, right? Maybe you're making a little bit, but that's the point there, which is tough when yields are at 5% right now. For yields, maybe a CD's at 4.25. If you're putting down $200,000, you should be making 10 grand a year risk free in the treasury market, and that's where that conversation gets a little bit difficult. But you talked about, Besfort, the same deal, right? As in, if everything's okay, maybe it makes sense. But I think that's where the whole market is. And as in, the numbers are stretched so thin that people don't want to do the work if they're stretching it thin anyway. And I think that's what we're seeing across the board. Is that what you're seeing across the board?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, people are, it's just a lot of people just, want to buy a house. There's definitely a lot of buyers out there. It's just most of them can't afford it. Yeah. So, when you talk about the down payment, the closing costs, then, what you have to pay every month. And then if you got to get in there and fix it up after, it's not going to work for most clients. One other thing is I used to get calls and emails from these wholesalers where they would try to wholesale properties so you can flip them. And that kind of has dried up too. I can see where the numbers just don't work. And, renovation cost is extremely expensive now. It's a lot more expensive than most people think. So, that's the problem right now. It's hard to make anything kind of work. So we're kind of stuck, but things are still moving. They're just not moving as fast as they used to. So it's like a new reality.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, man. We talk all the time, but he'd listen to what Besfort's saying, folks, because I'm seeing the same thing. Whether you're talking about, and that's what we have. I have one house right now, and I've been talking to Besfort. We're getting ready. The people are moving out, the renters, at the end of this month, and I'm thinking about popping that on the market. And we said we got to make it perfect, right, Besfort? We got to make it perfect. Yeah. That's the only way it's going to work in this market right now. And it's a beautiful house anyway, folks, but I'm going to fix every little crevice in there because that's where buyers are right now. But if you get there, okay, and listen, we're in Florida. we got the wind at our backs no matter what, period. We still have the wind at our backs in Florida, even though prices are nowhere near where they were when people were moving here. But we're dealing with that. And, so yes, supply, because I get texts sometimes, Besfort, from people in the market, and they see Florida in particular, right? Some of the markets that were on fire, the supply is really growing right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's that people are a little bit stuck in the past where they thought that they could get a house, put it on market and sell it. And you're now competing, right? You're competing with people on supply. But the other side of that is everybody needs a house, and we got buyers, folks. You just got to be at the cream of the crop to get that done. Because you make the great point, man. Nobody wants to spend money, and it's always more expensive than you think it is. And I think right now prices are on our minds, period, right?
Yeah, and if you look at the number of sales per year, it's pretty stable, pretty steady.
Nice.
If you go back, during the pandemic, it just went crazy high. But you go back 10 years, we're pretty stable. It was always at this level historically. So, things are still moving. There's just a lot more supply. And then another thing is, we talked about is the condo market, right? So
yes.
Most of these condo communities, especially if they're 3 floors and above, and if they're at least 20 years or older, have to go through these tests.
I tell you what, hang there, because that's perfect. Hang there, okay? Yeah. We'll leave you on that one, because this is an important one, folks. If you're interested in the condo market in Florida, don't miss this. We'll talk about it. Besfort, stay there. We'll finish this conversation up. We got one more segment, folks. Besfort and I, we'll come right back. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks. We got the markets in the red. S&P's off by 42 points right now. A little bit of selling coming into the closing bell, but we've gotten back a lot of those losses from this morning. NASDAQ 100 off by 204. We jump over to Apple shares right now, down an even 3% for Apple shares. And yeah, we got U.S. Steel up 23% as they approve that merger with Nippon Steel. Pretty remarkable. And then Boeing down only about 0.5%, but they're going to avoid prosecution criminal charges as well on those 737 Maxes. Lots going on today. But yeah, let's talk a little bit of the condo market, Besford, because boy, of course we had that tragedy with that building collapsing in Florida, things changing, but go ahead, talk about the condo market, please.
Yes, so, there's a new law by the governor, most of these communities, and not most, all of these communities that have 3 floors and above, 3 stories and above, and are 20 years or older, have to do these milestone inspections. So we just have to make sure that the integrity of the buildings are safe. And, and I don't know if you saw the news, but there was that, condo building in Clearwater Beach.
I saw it just recently.
Crack,
This was only like last week or a couple weeks ago, folks. They had to evacuate it, found a big crack. Yeah, go ahead, definitely.
Yeah, that's scary, right? Oof. So now, what happened is they deferred the maintenance. These HOAs, they deferred the maintenance because the owners didn't want to pay more, so they just deferred, and now everything is coming due. So they have to do all these things, and I believe they have to do everything by the end of next year. So the HOAs, and they hit the special assessments. So the HOA fees go from $350, in some cases $1,200, $1,300 a month, right? So you have a huge amount of people that want to sell, and the prices just go way down.
So look into that, folks. My dad used to talk about, right, Besfort, he'd buy a place and then he'd go into that HOA, he'd try and get on the board because they were just mismanaged everywhere. Nobody wants to spend money. You get it, but you got to do it, folks. So pay attention to those when you're doing it. Besfort, thanks so much, man. We'll do this again next Friday. Awesome. Folks, reach out to Besfort. Shoot me an email if you want to talk to him. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend, safe weekend. Be safe. No drunk driving, folks. Memorial. Have a great weekend.